Hello, everyone. Welcome to Defrosted Chicken. My name is Natalie Calderon, and I will be your host today and every day. Okay, so let's get started. Today, I want to talk about a few things. I want to start off with the name of the podcast. You might be wondering, what the fuck is she talking about? Defrosted Chicken. As you can see on the cover photo, there is a little subtext that says the trenches of parenthood. So you kind of get an idea that I'm going to be talking about parenthood. All right. So I came to the decision to name the podcast Defrosted Chicken as I was kind of brainstorming ideas. I was trying to pick something that was relatable to everyone and kind of a little funny and whatnot, right? So I came across a meme a few months ago that I saw, which I thought was super relatable. There was this kid that was like rushing to get off the couch to go take the chicken out the freezer and put it under hot water because his mom was almost home and he forgot to do it. And I remember thinking like, I've been there, right? Um, and I think most of us have been on both ends of this. You've been the child and you've been the parent. And as a parent, this can throw off your whole routine. So, anyways, that's why it's called Defrosted Chicken. So now I want to introduce myself, give you guys an idea of who I am and why I decided to do this. So for those of you that don't know me personally, like I said, my name is Natalie Calderon. I am 36 years old. I'm married. I have a 17-year-old son, an 8-year-old daughter, and a 6-month-old daughter. So I have 3 kids in completely different stages of their lives. There is big age gaps with my children, and all of that comes with its own struggles. I live in Sacramento, California, and I am a Latina. I am fluent in both English and Spanish. So sometimes I may say things in Spanish, and I'll do my best to translate them as best as I can for those of you that do not speak Spanish. So, originally, the main reason that I wanted to start this podcast was to talk about the struggles that come with parenthood, specifically postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, because unfortunately, this is something that I know about all too well. I've struggled with this before, I'm struggling with this now. And I've talked to so many moms recently that have told me their stories, and it just made me realize that a lot of moms are going through this. And because I know what it's like, I know how lonely it can be. Not only do I want to talk about those things, but I also want to talk about all the struggles that come with parenthood. And not every topic is going to be super heavy like this one, but we are going to talk about some heavy topics. But there's also going to be funny things we're going to talk about, the beautiful things of parenthood, and all that good stuff, okay? I have been open on my social media about the fact that I'm dealing with postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression. I haven't got into detail about everything or talked about exactly what I'm going through because it's hard. Okay, it's hard to talk about the thoughts that are going on in your head, the feelings that you're feeling that don't make any sense. There's a lot of guilt and a lot of shame attached to all of these things. And it's hard for your partner sometimes to understand. It's hard for your other children to understand. It's hard for your family to understand if they haven't been through it. So all these things weigh on you and you try to figure it out and you sometimes can't. And this can be a very lonely feeling. So this is mainly the reason why I decided to do this, because when I have been open about it on social media, I get a lot of messages from moms talking to me about their struggles. And I'm sitting here thinking like, I'm not the only one that's going through this. And it makes me feel a little less alone. So I decided to do this because not everyone is fortunate enough to have a support system or to have someone to talk to about all this stuff. And if there's a mom out there that's listening to this and it helps them feel seen or heard or feel not alone, then, that's going to make my heart happy. Even if I have one listener and that one listener is able to get through another day and push forward because of whatever I'm talking about, then that's a win. Now I want to talk a little bit about my experience. And before I get started, I just want all of you listening to know that this is very hard. Okay, not just for me, but for anyone going through this. It's very hard to be vulnerable. And I'm doing this because I know that it's going to have a positive outcome for somebody out there. And I'm getting a little emotional. um, but it's hard. So just bear with me here. All right. So my first experience with this was when I had my first daughter. She's now 8. And the very beginning, or I guess the very first sign that something was a little off, was a few days after I came home from the hospital. Now, mind you, my daughter was planned. My husband and I were not married at the time legally, but we lived together. We were building a family together. So I had a stable life at home. It's not like, this was something out of nowhere and I didn't know what to do. I wasn't prepared. So she was planned. But we came home from the hospital and my husband had to go back to work. He does own his own business, and at the time, we didn't have the luxury to have him stay home. So my mother-in-law was coming over and helping me with the baby. I started to cry uncontrollably every day for a few days. I could not stop crying. I just felt this sadness, this overwhelming feeling of sadness. And I was trying to hide it from my mother in law. I was trying to hide it from my husband. It came to the point where I was crying so much that I was getting nauseated. I couldn't hold any food down. I was vomiting. So I ended up going to the doctors, and they told me that it was probably just the baby blues, that if it didn't go away in a couple days, then I was probably dealing with postpartum depression. Now, I pulled up the definition of baby blues. So those of you that don't know what it is. And it says it's temporary mood swings and emotional ups and downs that occur in the days after childbirth. It's perfectly normal and doesn't require treatment. So that's basically what they told me. Like, if it doesn't go away in a few days, then we're dealing with something else. Well, it eventually subsided and I was feeling pretty much okay. I was raising my daughter, everything was good until it wasn't okay. So, before I continue, I want to give you guys a little background about my mental health. Prior to me going through postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, I had already gone through anxiety in the past and depression. So, 3 years before I had my daughter, my mom passed away from cancer. She had leukemia. And I had to deal with a lot during that time, which caused my anxiety to spike. Well, I wouldn't say spike, it kind of caused anxiety for me because one day my mom was okay. The next day, she wasn't feeling too well. And then all of a sudden, she had cancer. And 10 months later, she passed away. So everything progressed quickly. And that instilled a fear in me that, holy shit, we can die at any time, which is something that you kind of know. But at the time I was 23, I was just like partying, having fun. I really didn't have any worries in the world until my life just basically changed completely from one day to the next. And I had a good relationship with my mom. I still lived at home. Like, I loved her. So I took it very hard. And because I was the only one of her children that wasn't married or had my own children, a lot of the responsibility fell on me. So her last 10 months of life, I spent so much time with her. And it was just hard to lose all of that. And that's when my anxiety and my depression kind of started. I was doing okay when I had my daughter, but the big change in my life and all the hormones and everything just spiked up again. And that's kind of where things started to change for me. I've never really done well with change. Um, I'm a type of person that kind of likes to have things in order. And if things don't go the way I plan them, I kind of just go all crazy, right? Because it's like, nope, it has to be this way. So that's kind of who I am just naturally. So obviously, big changes cause me to panic. Now, losing my mother was a big change in my life. Not only that, a few months after she passed away, I decided to move to California. At the time, I lived in Arizona. My mom, my mom was there. My dad was there. My sister was there. And so was my brother. So all of my immediate family lived in Arizona, and I decided to move back to California. I was going to take a year out here just to heal and figure out what it is I wanted to do, because when my mom was sick, she spent most of her time in my room. She no longer could get up on her bed. My dad and her had a bed that was like super high. And because she was so sick and so frail, she just couldn't get up anymore. So she would sleep in my room. So after she was gone, I found it very hard to go back into my room. So that's kind of what happened. I left from Arizona to California, and that was another big change. After living in California for a while, my sister did end up moving back to California. So I did have her around. But unfortunately, when my daughter was almost a year old, my sister had to move back to Arizona. After my sister left, it was very hard because the circumstances that she left under were hard for for her personal life, and for me as well, because my sister and I are only a year and a half apart. We're best friends. We've always had each other. And I just felt alone because she was the only immediate family that I had in California at the time. And now she was gone. So it was a big change for me. And I think that's when I just kind of started to panic, because not only did I not have my mother to call when I didn't know what to do with my baby. Sometimes, you go through things and you just call your mom and you're like, hey, mom, like, what do I do? And my sister kind of took that place because she had two kids of her own already. So she would help me with things that my mom taught her or that she already knew. And even though I had my mother in law there, she is an amazing mother in law. I love her so much, and I see her as a mom. It was not the same, and it was different. She was my husband's mom. She wasn't my mom. So I think everything kind of started to feel more real, that here I am experiencing motherhood for the first time, and I don't have my own mother around to guide me. And you add the fact that my sister was now gone, I didn't have any immediate family. I think the big change of just feeling alone just kind of set in, and I started to just spiral and be worried and scared about literally everything. While the spiraling began and the anxiety set in, I started to cry again, uncontrollably. I didn't know what to do. I would be at work and I would walk away from my desk, go to the bathroom, or go outside for a walk, and I would just cry. And I would cry, and I didn't know why I was crying. I was scared. I just felt anxious and scared, and I would just cry uncontrollably. And I would have to get my shit together because I had to go back inside, and then I would have to go home. I had to go pick up my son. I had to go pick up my baby from my in law's house because they watched her while I was at work. And I had to just keep doing it. And I didn't want my kids to know that I was struggling. And I didn't know how to tell my husband. And so I was trying to hide it from him until one day he came home and he picked up some dinner, and we sat at the table, and I started the whole vomiting thing again because I was crying so much and I couldn't hold the food down. But I was like, okay, just act normal, sit at the table, eat the food, and get it together. Well, came home, he put the food on the table, and I just got up right away and went to the room because I was going to start crying. And so he obviously was like, what the hell? He followed me, and he's like, what's going on? And I'm just crying. He's like, what happened? Did something happen to the kids? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, no, the kids are fine. And he's like, okay, so what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know. I cannot stop crying. And so that's where it all started. Now, postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, it doesn't make sense. There are things that you can't really explain, and for everyone, it's different, okay? And this is just my experience, and I'm going to talk about the irrational thoughts that I had and where they stemmed from. So I used to watch a lot of true crime. I would listen to podcasts about true crime. I would watch true crime TV. I mean, I really enjoyed watching true crime, like I think most women do for whatever reason. Um, but that ended up being my downfall in all of this because somewhere along the way, I think I listened to a podcast or I saw an episode of some show, or it could have been both, where there was a mother. They were telling the story of a mom who killed her kids because she was dealing with untreated postpartum depression. It was like two separate episodes that I heard about that. So when I started the whole crying thing again, I started trying to diagnose myself, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, why is this happening? And I remembered the first doctor's appointment that I had where they were like, you probably are going to have postpartum depression if it doesn't go away. And I was like, shit, maybe I have postpartum depression. Then somewhere along the way, I remembered about those episodes about these ladies who had untreated postpartum depression and they ended up killing their kids. Now, guys, this is hard for me to talk about because, like, I don't want people to know the shit that was going on in my head, okay? But it's important because I know that I am not the only one. And if this is going to work and if I'm going to do this, I have to be completely vulnerable. So bear with me. Judge me if you want to. I don't really care. So, what I started to fixate on was, oh my God, what if I become one of those moms that has postpartum depression and kills their kids? What if that happens to me? It was a bunch of what if this, what if that. And I started to just fixate on that. That's all I thought about all day long, day in, day out, day in, day out. That is what I thought about. I would think about myself hurting my kids to test myself just to make sure, okay, I don't want to. Cool, I'm good. I'm not there yet. Like that was my mindset all day long. And now that I think about it, it's not now, whenever I think about it, that shit breaks my heart because I'm like, I was doing this to myself. No one was really putting these thoughts in my head but myself. How was I not able to control all of these things? This is not something that I wanted to do because, well, here we are. I didn't do it, guys, right? But it was the fear that I might do it, which is what? Anxiety, right? I started to spiral on the idea of what if this happens? And let me tell you, this has been the hardest thing I have ever been through in my whole entire life. I was ashamed about the things that were going on in my head. I didn't know how to tell the father of my child that I was thinking these things because I was like, he's going to take the baby away from me. Like, they're going to call CPS or someone's going to call CPS. I can't tell nobody what I'm thinking because they're going to take my daughter away from me. And then I was like, well, you know what? Maybe they should. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have had a baby. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. So then there goes the second part of the spiral. My daughter is better off without me. I'm losing my mind. She's going to end up having a crazy mom. I'm going to end up in some psych ward somewhere because I lost my mind to postpartum depression. And maybe I should just leave because what if I do end up hurting my kids? Maybe it's better if I just go. You know, her dad is a really good dad. He was a single dad when I met him. He's got one kid and he's strong and you know, he's got this. I don't need to be here. I'm just making everything worse. That was my mindset. Now, imagine you feeling like this and thinking like this constantly, every hour of your day, unless you're asleep, right? And let's hope you're not having a dream about this shit. Now, if you haven't been through this, or if you're, you know, a spouse of someone who's going through this, just try to put yourself in a situation how mentally draining this is for someone, day in and day out, whether it's the thoughts that I'm having or different thoughts of sadness or whatever. It is emotionally, mentally, and physically draining. So I ask you, guys, fathers, family members, whatever, please take all these things into consideration. If you have someone in your life who's struggling with postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression, be patient, be kind. Sometimes we lash out because we can't function properly with all the bullshit that's going on in our heads. And it might seem like we're lashing out at you specifically. It's not. Give us some grace, please. This is temporary. When I finally found some words to tell my husband, to try to explain to him, I didn't tell him everything that I'm telling you guys right now. And if he hears this, this is probably going to be the first time that he gets all the details. Because it's hard. It's hard to sit in front of the person that you love and the person that you build a family with and tell them that you're having these thoughts. So when I finally was able to tell him, I told him a little bit like, oh, I'm worried that maybe, like, what if I have postpartum depression and, you know, like I do something to the baby without wanting to. Because let me make this clear, I didn't want to do these things. I was scared that I was going to get to that point. And he was like, what are you saying? Like, you're going to hurt the baby? Now, I'm not doing this to badmouth my husband or anything. And I think it's not just him, but I think it's a lot of men don't really understand what it's like. So the reaction I got from him was kind of like, I don't get this. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it was almost like he didn't say get over it, but that's just the the vibe I felt coming from him. And it could have just been me just, over analyzing the situation because I'm over here like scared for my life that he's going to be like, you want to hurt our kids? Like, get out of here. I'm going to take the kids from you. Like, that is, I mean, the fear of everything was on my plate at that point. After kind of giving him an idea of what I was dealing with, I did feel a sense of relief because up to that point, I felt like there was no room left inside of me for anything else, not even to eat. Because at that point, I wasn't eating. I was throwing everything up because I was filled with so much guilt and I was overflowing. And I felt like, okay, I let some of that out and I felt like I can relax a little bit. I didn't tell him everything, but he knows kind of where my head is at right now. He didn't understand it. He had a hard time understanding exactly what I was going through because to him it didn't make sense. Like, what are you talking about? We have a healthy, beautiful baby girl. Everything is okay. Our life is fine. Like, why do you feel like this? Exactly. Why do I feel like this? Is the question that I was trying to answer myself. As things progressed and time went on, it took a strain on our relationship. Um, it was hard. He didn't understand what I was going through, and I was just trying to survive. That's how I felt it. I felt like he wasn't supporting me. And in reality, he didn't know how to support me. And I was basically in survival mode. And we argued a lot. A lot of things just kind of went downhill with our relationship. And I made the decision that it was better if we split up, not only for us, but for our baby and for our son. I did feel a lot of guilt when I came to that decision for multiple reasons. One, we have a kid together and I'm splitting us up. Two, his son, who has now become my son and calls me mom, is going to lose another mother. So his biological mother couldn't deal with motherhood and she left. And I took her place and now I'm leaving. So I didn't come to this decision lightly, but at the time, it was a decision that I thought was best for my mental health. He's not supporting me the way that I need to be supported. And maybe I wasn't very clear about exactly what I needed, but that's neither here nor there because that's not where my head was at the time. And I said, we got to end this relationship. We got to split up. Like, I'm never going to keep my daughter away from you. Like, she's our kid. Like, we can do this amicably and we'll be okay. So we got to the point where we found an apartment down the street from our house, um, went in, put a deposit. I think the move-in day was like a month or a month and a half. I moved into the spare bedroom and my son did question like, hey mommy, like why are you sleeping here now? And I just told him that the baby was keeping daddy up at night because she was crying, which my daughter was sleeping through the night, but um, and so daddy can get enough sleep because he has to wake up early for work, that I was going to sleep here. And he was like, oh, okay. So, that's how I was dealing with it. But I'm like, okay, now I got to explain to him why I'm moving out. So at this point, my husband and I, we're not really talking to each other. He's upset with me because I've decided to leave. And I'm upset with him because he's not supporting me. And it's his fault that I'm leaving. At least that's how my brain was working at the time. He's blaming me, I'm blaming him. We're not really talking much. We talk about what we need to talk about, but he ultimately said, if this is what you want to do, then go ahead and go. As we're awaiting my move in date to the apartment, we do end up talking, and we came to the decision that we were going to make things work. So that's what we ended up doing. So, because here we are, we have another daughter together. There she is. Now, this doesn't mean that things were great after that. Things were still hard. We were still working through a lot of things. I was working through a lot of things. I was trying to figure out how to get myself out of this hole that I was in. And I was also trying to figure out how to be open enough with my husband to tell him what I was going through. And I wasn't. I wasn't really as open as I should have been. I'm still not because, again, this is hard. I decided to go to therapy. Now, I was very reluctant to do that just because I had never done it before. I wasn't sure what to expect. I was also scared that if I told her the things that were going on in my head, that she was gonna, again, call CPS and take my daughter away. But as I sat outside her office, working up the nerve to actually go in, I told myself, you know what? This is what I gotta do. I need to do this to get better, to be a good mother to my children. So I went in there and I told her everything. And I was so scared of what she was going to tell me. I'm like, she's about to tell me that I am a danger to my children and that she's got to call CPS or some shit. And I know that there's a patient doctor confidentiality thing, but still, like, nothing that I was thinking was rational. So after I told her everything, she just sits there. She's like, okay, well, do you want to hurt your kids? I said, no, I don't want to hurt my kids. I was like, but what if I do? It's like, okay, do you know right from wrong? I said, yes. She's okay. Well, I'm not worried that you're going to hurt your kids. So why are you worried that you're going to hurt your kids? I said, well, because what if I do? Like, I am over here, like, with all these thoughts and I have depression and anxiety and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what if it happens? She goes, yeah, and what if pigs fall from the sky? And what if a big giant hole opens up and eats you up? And then she started saying a bunch of random stuff. She's like, these are all possibilities that could happen, but probably won't happen. I continued to see the therapist a couple of times, and then eventually I decided that I didn't want to go back anymore. Things got better. You know, not everything is perfect, but things were better, and they were never as bad as they were at that point in my life. So, because I went through all of that, I did say that I never wanted to have any more kids. I was done. I had my daughter and I had my son, and that was enough for me. The older I got, I started to really reconsider my original thought of not having any more kids because I think the age thing kind of played a part in it. I'm like, well, I'm getting older. Like, my window's going to close. And if I really don't want any more kids, then I need to be 100% sure about this. Eventually, my husband and I decided that we were going to have another child. After making that decision, I did sit down with my husband and I had a long talk with him, and I let him know that I was scared to do this again, that even though I wanted to do it, it didn't take away from the fear that I had that I would have to go through all of this all over again. So I let him know that I needed his support now more than ever. I stopped working and I basically just focused on my pregnancy, on my health. I started weight training. I think I was 7 weeks into my pregnancy, all the way till about 36 weeks. Doing exercise really helped my mind, really helped with anxiety and everything. So it became a habit I was doing 3 to 5 days a week throughout my whole pregnancy. Towards the end of my pregnancy, however, I did begin to get anxious. I started to get scared. I started to spiral on all the what ifs. What if something happens during childbirth? What if she dies? What if she's born with something? It's the list can go on forever. When the time came for me to finally have my second daughter, all of my fears that I had came true. Unfortunately, I did have a traumatic birth with her. What ended up happening was that my daughter got stuck in my pelvic area. She didn't fit. She was about 9 pounds, 8 ounces at birth, and she didn't fit. So she was stuck there, and doctors think she went at least 10 minutes without oxygen. And when she was born with a punctured lung. Now, because of that, as soon as they were finally able to get her out, they had to rush her to the NICU. They had to intubate her. And from there, they had to take her to another hospital, which was about 30 to 40 minutes away, that specialized in NICU care. I spent 4 days in the hospital after that with her. And those were not only painful, but extremely emotionally hard. I had a hard time going downstairs to the NICU to go visit her. I couldn't stay there very long because I would just start crying uncontrollably. I would cry myself to sleep every single night. I felt like I just had a hole in my heart. I had a baby, but I couldn't hold her. And I can't really explain the feeling. It's painful, but it's a different type of painful. And anyways, once they discharged me from the hospital, that was even harder because now I couldn't just go downstairs whenever I wanted to see her. We ended up getting an Airbnb in that city so I can be close by. It was about a 5-minute drive. But even then, it was tough. The doctor said that she would probably be in the NICU for 3 to 5 weeks. Well, my daughter was actually released after 9 days. Things were looking okay until they weren't. My daughter was about 4 months old and she was kind of getting over a cold. And also, I had given her some formula that day because I wasn't really producing enough breast milk at that point, and she didn't like it. And it seemed to have a negative effect on her stomach. She started to vomit. Not only was she vomiting the formula, but she was vomiting everything else I had given her. She probably threw up about 7 times back to back. She started to get pale and weak, and I went into a complete panic. I was home alone with her. My other kids were at school, my husband was at work, and I called him just in a panic and telling him I didn't know what to do, that something was wrong. I started crying. He told me I can't be there for 30 minutes, so just wait for me. And she was fine. She fell asleep. She was breathing. I was like checking on her, but I was shaking and I was crying. And ever since that day, I started back into my old spiral of what if this and what if that. It was the same thing. Day in and day out, I'd started thinking about all the things that could happen. Then I went back to oh my God, this was a traumatic experience. Of course, I'm going to get postpartum anxiety this time. Of course, I'm going to get postpartum depression. And that's where the old spiral happened. I'm not going to get into detail because it was exactly the same thing as the first time around. All those thoughts, all those things consumed my brain day in and day out. I am doing better now. I do have a long way to go. This is something that's going to be with me forever. I will probably always have anxiety, but I know what to do this time around. I have more of a support system. I know what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And that's what I'm trying to do. I started therapy again. I started exercising again, and all those things have been helping me. But if you've never been through something like this, then you don't really understand the emotional and mental toll it takes on your body. And it can get dark. I've had some dark days, and I'm ashamed to admit it, but it's true. And like I said previously, this isn't going to work if I'm not honest. I'm not going to be able to help someone get through a tough time if I'm not being honest with myself and with you guys. I remember the first time around and this time around, there was a point because you hit a point where you feel like you're just drowning and nothing is ever going to get better. I remember thinking, I can't live like this. If this is what my life is going to look like forever, I don't want to live. And this is really hard for me to say out loud because I don't think I've ever really told anyone except my sister. And it's not like I wanted to end my life. I don't think I would ever have the guts to do something like that. But just to have that thought cross your mind is scary and it's shameful, right? I'm ashamed of it. To end this episode, I want to share a quote that I found here by Dr. Catherine Weisner that says, postpartum depression is an illness that takes away a woman's ability to access joy right at the moment she needs it the most. The last thing I want to share, which is something that I want to do after every episode, is now this is a little quote that I found, and I'm not sure who wrote it. It's from an Instagram page called healing.mamas. Here it goes. Do you ever think about how powerful you are? You brought life into this world. And while you were still healing, bleeding, not sleeping, and the hormones inside of you were dropping, you loved that life you made and gave them everything you had. And even when you felt empty, you found a way to give them more. All right, guys. Till next time.